Chicago is a city divided as thousands of delegates and observers stream into the city for the 25th Republican Convention. Partisanship runs high, and the trappings of the grand old party dominate the scene before the serious business gets underway. Both Eisenhower and Taft...
After only a year and a half in the Senate, Nixon was a leading candidate for the vice presidential nomination.
And here comes Mr. Republican himself, Senator Robert Taft.
Taft partisans, mostly conservative and isolationist, applauded Nixon's fervent anti-communism, while General Eisenhower's more liberal internationalist backers were attracted to Nixon's support of the Marshall Plan, his commitment to rebuilding post-war Europe. The California delegation was pledged to its favorite son, Governor Earl Warren, but behind the scenes, Nixon lobbied hard for the nomination of Eisenhower.
He was a man with no set ideology, no set real deep-down principles. He wasn't a Taft Republican. He wasn't an Eisenhower Republican. He was a Nixon Republican.
With New York's big block of votes, the issue is no longer in doubt. And a wildly cheering convention hails its nominee, Dwight D. Eisenhower, soldier and statesman.
Away from the convention floor, Eisenhower huddled with Nixon. The young senator represented the growing power of the West Coast, and he was a rough-and-tumble campaigner. The general offered him the vice presidency.
And as we contribute to the Republican cause, what we will do is to forge a great victory for the Republican Party next November. But a victory which will be a victory not only for the Republican Party, but what is more important, it will be a victory for America and for the cause of free peoples throughout the world.
Eisenhower intended to keep to the high road, he told his new running mate. It was up to Nixon to flail the Democrats and their presidential candidate, Adlai Stevenson.
There is no question in my mind as to the loyalty of Mr. Stevenson. But the question is one as to his judgment.
Many good Americans are concerned by the way that President Truman and Governor Stevenson have both attempted to ridicule and poo-poo the communist threat within the United States.
You read about another bribe, you read about another tax fix, you read about another gangster getting favors from the government. The people are sick and tired of it. They're outraged and they want something done about it, and they're tired of an administration which, instead of cleaning up, is covering up the scandals in Washington at the present time.
Suddenly, Nixon faced a scandal of his own. The New York Post reported that wealthy supporters had set up a secret fund for Nixon's personal use.
And if that were true, let me say first of all that I should never have accepted the nomination for the vice presidency of the United States, and if it were true, I would get off the ticket right away. But it is not true.
In fact, the fund was not secret and was earmarked exclusively for political expenses. But the damage had been done. Aides urged Eisenhower to drop Nixon from the ticket. Even Republican newspapers demanded he resign.
When those headlines first came in the paper, I just wanted to hide that paper. I didn't want anyone to see it. I couldn't eat, and I knew that it wasn't true, but what could I do?
Well, when the world seemed the blackest and the whole Nixon campaign had halted in Portland, Oregon, I got a telegram from his mother. I took it into him and gave it to him, and he was sitting in a large chair with his arms on the side, almost like the Lincoln statue that you see in Washington, the Lincoln Memorial. And I handed him the telegram, and he read it, and he dropped it on his in the chair, and his head fell forward, and tears came down his eyes, and it was obvious that he'd been terribly moved by what all this meant, that it was so important to him to prove to his mother that he had never done anything wrong.
Was Nixon on or off the ticket? General Eisenhower had been frustratingly silent. Finally, after 3 days of waiting, a weary, anxious Nixon received Eisenhower's phone call.
And he said, General, he said, I'm just Richard Nixon. And he said, I'm just a very young guy that doesn't know you very well. But he said, I must tell you, General, that there comes a time, even in your life, when you have to shit or get off the pot.
And there was this dead silence, and we didn't know whether the ball game was over right then or not. But Eisenhower seemed to take it in as it was meant to be given, and came to the conclusion, as he told Nixon on the phone, he reported to us after the conversation, that Nixon should go to California and make a nationwide speech explaining all the details of this so-called secret fund, and that he would authorize the National Committee to pay for the cost.
Nixon secluded himself in Los Angeles.